Good evening, and welcome back to the Pastor Study with Pastor Dan Wessel. Easter is soon upon us. Tomorrow in church vernacular is Maundy Thursday. That is the night of Jesus' last meal, the Last Supper with his disciples, what we know to be a Seder meal that he altered with the bread and the wine, representing his body and his blood. Friday, he's crucified. We know that is Good Friday. And then on the third day, Easter Sunday, he rose from the dead, and we have the empty tomb to display to the world. But how the disciples came to belief is a little different story. And I think maybe it is much the same with many of us. In Luke chapter 24, the ladies have gone to the tomb. Jesus has now been in that tomb since Friday. It's now Sunday morning, probably sunrise or shortly thereafter. They arrive at the tomb and the stone is rolled away. And they go in and they find an empty tomb with the grave clothes aligned on the slab just as they were if Jesus had been in them, had been inhabiting them, I guess, or wearing them. And they encounter two angels. And the question that is asked of them is this: why do you look for the living among the dead? Phenomenal question. In fact, it's at the core of our beliefs. Why do we look for the living, one yet alive, among the dead? I'll come back to that in just a moment. How the disciples came to their understanding of Jesus' uh, resurrection is interesting. We don't know but three of the 11 that they have at that point. Judas has obviously betrayed Jesus, committed suicide. When they get to the tomb, we're told Peter goes in and looks around, mystified, wondered what happened, walks off. John chapter 20, however, tells us John went in, looked around, and at that moment he believed. If there had never been any question before, that empty tomb with empty grave clothes convinced John that Jesus was in fact the Messiah and had risen from the dead. He was in fact now unique in every way. Perhaps Peter's problem was, excuse me, his own betrayal of Jesus, his rejection of Jesus, even though Jesus had told him he was going to do that. The third disciple that we know about was Thomas. We frequently call him Doubting Thomas. The disciples are together later that night. Thomas is not with them for some reason, and Jesus appears. Talks to them now. All 10 of them, less Thomas apparently, are in one accord. That is, they believe that Jesus is risen from the dead. Thomas says, "I won't believe until I can put my hands in the holes in his hands, until I put my hand in his side." Well, it's not much longer that Jesus does in fact show up and wins Thomas over. Here's the point I want to make tonight. We cannot genuinely be Christians unless we serve a risen Lord. You see, the resurrection of Jesus is the core of our faith. That's what it's built on. And if we do not have the resurrection, if we do not believe the resurrection, nothing else is there. Oh, it gives us a nice set of rules to live by, and teaches us how to live a good and a moral life. But the understanding of Jesus as Messiah, Jesus is Lord of life, Jesus is the Son of God, has to begin with the empty tomb and the resurrected Jesus. Now, we can claim to be followers of Christ. We follow his teachings without necessarily being a Christian. Do you see the difference? One is we're acting like a Christian, but the other is we have genuinely believed that he is the Son of God, that he rose from the dead on that third day after being crucified, and today sits at the right hand of the Father, making intercession for us. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15, that if Jesus was not resurrected, then we are to be more pitied than anyone else. That is, we've committed our lives to this concept only to be disappointed, I guess, at the point of death. But for those of us who believe, and certainly Paul was among them, that moment of death is when we will step into his presence and see him as he is. And in one sense, Easter is all about that. It's not about the Easter bunnies and the Easter egg hunts and the things we've attached to it. It's about recognizing that we genuinely serve a risen Savior, that the resurrection of Jesus was in fact a reality. That was the core of all of the teaching of the New Testament evangelists and pastors. It began and ended with the resurrection. That was what made Christianity what it was. All the other religions had scores of gods, different ways of worshiping, some of which includes sacrificing their children, others included sexual perversions. I mean, the sky was the limit. But only Christianity had a God who was willing to die for his creation, for his people, that they could fellowship with him and have a relationship with him for eternity. That's the difference. There's scores of others, but that is the core difference between those of us who are Christians and everybody else. So when you celebrate Easter, when you gather wherever you do and whatever fellowship you worship at, and you sit there this Sunday morning, I hope that you'll take the time to realize it's not about what songs you sing. It's not about how good the pastor preaches. It's about an empty tomb and a resurrected Savior who now sits at the right hand of the Father, making intercession for you and I. That's his ministry. As we proclaim that we believe in the resurrection and that we will in fact be a part of that upon our own death. And I'll leave you with that thought. I look forward to seeing you next week back in the Pastor Study.